On the third day of being trapped in the body of a novel's resident S, I slapped my resignation letter on my boss's desk. With a seven-figure compensation for the whole transmigration fiasco sitting in my bank account, I bought a one-way Amtrak ticket to the middle of nowhere that same night. If I stayed in the city any longer, I'd be emotionally bled dry by the book's main characters, a toxic power couple seemingly blessed by the gods of drama. In a small town nestled among green hills and clear streams, I rented a little house with a yard and bought a husky. I pointed at its fluffy head and said with paternal affection, "From now on, your name is Chloe." I never would have guessed that 2 weeks later, a Maybach would pull up next to my neighbor's pigsty. The real Chloe Sullivan, dressed in a couture gown and teetering on stilettos, took one step and sank deep into the mud. Her eyes were red as she confronted me. "Leo Hayes, you ghost everyone just to come out here and mock me?" Before I could answer, the mayor's big white goose let out a mighty honk from a yard and launched itself at the other main character, Caleb Vance, viciously pecking at the cuffs of his expensive suit trousers. I grabbed a nearby stick and ran over. "Chloe, let go! Stop chewing that!" In the next second, the faces of both Chloe Sullivan and Caleb Vance turned a sickly shade of green. At 4 a.m., on my third day in this new reality, I woke up in the original Leo's bed, which was surrounded by stacks of limited edition sneakers. A torrential rainstorm was raging outside. The original Leo had caught a fever that he never recovered from. Thus, my arrival after standing in a downpour just like this for 3 hours to snag some designer collaboration bag for Chloe Sullivan. Pathetic. I felt my forehead. The fever was gone. My phone buzzed. It was Caleb. "Leo, stay away from Chloe. A fly like you just annoys her." I looked at the message and laughed out loud. For the past 2 days, I'd been walking on eggshells, terrified that one wrong move would lead me to the same end as the character in the book, bankrupt and taking a swan dive off a skyscraper. Now, all I felt was relief. I replied to him, "You got it, boss. Whatever you say. Message sent." Then I immediately blocked his number. Caleb would probably be satisfied with my compliant attitude, arrogantly assuming I'd finally accepted my place. He was half right. I had accepted my reality, which was that the farther away I got from them, the better. At dawn, I went to the office with dark circles under my eyes. When my boss saw the resignation letter, he was completely stunned. "Leo, you're the top salesman in the company. You're on the verge of a promotion. Are you sure you want to do this? Think it over." Nothing to think about. I packed up the few personal items from my desk and walked out without a second glance. Back at the luxurious apartment the original Leo had rented, I felt a wave of nausea looking at the room full of gifts he'd bought for Chloe, but never had the guts to give her. Hermes scarves, Chanel perfume, and a pile of jewelry from brands I didn't even recognize. I took pictures of everything and listed it all on eBay. The title, "A Simp's Rejected Gifts, 90% off, price to move, buyer pays shipping." Instantly, my inbox exploded. Someone messaged, "Dude, you finally see the light?" I replied, "Saw it. About to join a monastery." Another asked, "This stuff for real? The condition looks too good?" I replied, "As real as a simp's broken heart." By the end of the afternoon, everything was sold. Another chunk of cash landed in my bank account. Combined with the transmigration compensation, it was enough for me to coast for decades. That night, I blocked about 90% of my contacts. Why I got to Chloe's name? A message from her popped up. "Leo, did Kayla talk to you? Don't overthink it. I only see you as a brother." There was again in the original Leo's memories. That sentence had appeared at least 100 times. Every time Chloe strung him along while simultaneously accepting Caleb's advances, she'd use that line to placate him. My stomach turned again. I typed a single word, but then block delete. The world went quiet. Carrying a small suitcase, I boarded a train heading out to the countryside. As I watched the city lights recede outside the window, I let out a long breath. The air smelled like freedom. I got off in a place called Havenwood. The mountains were lush, the water was clear, and the people were friendly. I rented a small farmhouse at the edge of town, with a yard for a price that was practically a giveaway. The landlady, Martha, handed me the keys with a cheerful grin. "Leo, honey, you just let me know if you need anything." I spent 2 days cleaning up the yard. On a trip to the town's farmer's market, my eyes landed on a husky. It was sitting in a cage. Its eyes clear and filled with a kind of innate, majestic stupidity. Perfect. I paid the man and cradled the dog in my arms. It squirmed restlessly against my chest. I made a solemn declaration. "Your new name is Chloe. Chloe Sullivan." The husky let out a soft arwoo. As if in agreement, I smiled. A new life was beginning. I had no idea that this brief period of peace would be shattered just 2 weeks later. Life in the country was even better than I'd imagined. I'd sleep until I woke up naturally, roused by the sound of birds chirping and my Chloe's wolf-like howls. I started getting serious about gardening. I cleared a patch in the yard for a vegetable garden and planted tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers. I built a grape trellis against a wall, picturing myself relaxing under it in the summer heat. I even got a few chickens. My biggest workout of the day was chasing them around to collect eggs. Of course, the main event of my life was the daily battle of wits with my Chloe. "Chloe, sit." The husky popped its butt right on top of my newly planted green onion sprouts. "Chloe, no chewing up the house." I was already on my 4th pair of slippers. "Chloe Sullivan, if you dig up my vegetable patch again, you're not getting dinner tonight." I stood with my hands on my hips, yelling at the furry menace who was enthusiastically digging a hole right next to my cucumber vines. It stopped, tilted its head at me, a cucumber leaf still dangling from its mouth. My neighbor, Doris, walked by with a hoe over her shoulder and happened to hear me. "Leo, that's such a pretty name for a dog. Chloe Sullivan sounds like a city girl." I nodded in profound agreement. "Yep, acts like one too." Doris let out a hearty laugh and went on her way. Chloe lived up to the husky name. Besides destroying things, she was also an avid socialite. She tried to become blood brothers with a mayor's prize rooster and ended up getting chased around the yard. She was also constantly trying to jump into the adjacent pigsty to commune with the pigs. I documented her adorable idiocy daily, posting pictures to a private Instagram account visible only to a few friends. The caption was usually something like, "Living the quiet life with a dumb dog." Friend A commented, "Leo, you enjoying early retirement?" I replied, "Do not disturb, I have ascended." Friend B asked, "What's the dog's name? It's got so much energy." I replied, "Chloe." A string of ellipses followed along with a single word. Savage. My life was simple, orderly, and peaceful. I'd never felt such tranquility. I felt like I could stay here forever. Just me and my Chloe. That afternoon, I discovered another crime scene next to my vegetable patch. My most prized tomato plant had been ripped out by the roots, mauled beyond recognition. The culprit was standing there holding the plant in its mouth, looking at me with an expression of pure innocence. My blood pressure spiked. "Chloe Sullivan, you so much as look at my cucumber vines again, and I swear I'll turn you into stew tonight." My furious shout echoed through the quiet village. Just then, the low rumble of an engine grew closer. A black Maybach, completely out of place among the rustic farmhouses, slowly pulled to a stop nearby, right next to Mayor Thompson's pigsty. A car door opened. My heart skipped a beat. The real Chloe Sullivan got out of the car. She was wearing a white designer gown I couldn't name and had her makeup done perfectly. The contrast with the muddy country lane was jarring. The heel of her stiletto, at least 5 inches high, landed squarely in a patch of wet mud. She couldn't pull it out. Her expression twisted for a second before she regained her composure. She must have heard my shouting just now and probably thought I was out here using the dog's name as a cover to vent my frustrations about her. She looked at me, her eyes a mix of complicated emotions. My brain was struggling to catch up. She finally wrenched her shoe free, caked in mud mixed with what looked suspiciously like chicken droppings. She ignored it and limped toward me. Leo Hayes. She stopped in front of me, striking her usual pose. I know you hate me, that you resent me, but isn't trying to get my attention like this a little childish? I stared at her, completely baffled. What are you talking about? Just then, the other car door opened. Caleb Vance emerged, dressed in a sharp Armani suit, his leather shoes immaculate. He frowned, looking around in disgust at the pigs and vegetable gardens. Finally, his gaze landed on me. "If you're done with your tantrum, you can come back now," he said, his tone as if reprimanding an unruly subordinate. "Stop embarrassing yourself out here." The moment the words left his mouth, a piercing, triumphant goose call split the air. The mayor's resident feathered attack helicopter had somehow escaped its enclosure. It must have been provoked by Caleb's alpha male energy. It stretched its long neck, spread its wings, and charged at him like a small white bomber plane. It zeroed in on his expensive suit trousers and began pecking furiously. Caleb instantly lost his cool, kicking and dodging. "Get off me, you damn animal!" I saw that a hole was about to be pecked through the fabric. Back in my yard, my husky Chloe was busy sharpening her teeth on a water pipe. I quickly grabbed a bamboo pole from the corner of the fence. "Chloe, let go of that! That pipe is expensive!" I yelled toward the dog in my yard. Hearing my voice, the husky Chloe immediately released the pipe and came bounding out of the vegetable patch, tail wagging. She ran toward me joyfully as she passed the real Chloe. She enthusiastically leaped up to greet her. 2 large, muddy paw prints appeared starkly on her pristine white gown. Chloe Sullivan froze completely. She looked down at the muddy stains on her dress. Then she looked at the panting, dumb-looking husky in front of her, and she replayed my shout from a moment ago. "Chloe, let go." Her brain seemed to short-circuit. She pointed a trembling finger at the husky. "You named it Chloe?" I hugged my dog, nodding calmly. "Yeah. Is there a problem?" Chloe's face went from white to red, then from red to a sickly green. Caleb had finally managed to shake off the goose, but his trouser leg was now smeared with several patches of mud. He heard our exchange, and his face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. The yard fell silent, the only sound being the goose's triumphant honk. "Leo Hayes, what is the meaning of this?" Caleb's voice sounded like it was being squeezed through his teeth, laced with an anger he could no longer suppress. He had probably never been this humiliated in his entire life, chased by a goose, pants ruined, and his woman pounced on by a dog. Most importantly, the architect of all this chaos was me, the fly he'd never once taken seriously. I stroked Chloe's head, my voice even. "It means nothing. It's just a name. Just a name." Chloe finally found her voice, sharp and wounded. "You named a dog after me and you say it means nothing?" "She's cute." "You're cute," I said, spouting deadpan nonsense. Chloe was so furious, her chest heaved, and she couldn't utter another word. Caleb, forcing himself to calm down, reverted to his default CEO mode. He pulled a checkbook and a Mont Blanc fountain pen from his inner suit pocket. "Name your price," he scribbled furiously. "A picture of casual power. Sell me this dog and then get out of this town immediately." He held out a signed blank check to me. This was his classic problem-solving method. Throw money at it. Too bad for him. This was Havenwood. Before I could speak, Mayor Thompson ambled over, his hands clasped behind his back. He glanced at the check in Caleb's hand, then back at Caleb. "Son, around here, money can't buy everything." The mayor spat out a blade of grass he'd been chewing. Leo here is a valued member of our community. He can't just up and leave. Caleb's face twitched. A valued member. The mayor puffed out his chest with pride. Leo knows how to use one of them. Watch a mallet, a drone. He helps us survey the crops. Caleb's expression soured even more. He probably couldn't comprehend how a worthless person in his eyes had somehow become a local tech guru in the countryside. He withdrew the check, his face grim. I don't care who you people are. This house, I'm buying it. He turned to me. I'm giving you 3 days to pack your things and get out. With that, he pulled out his phone, ready to have his all-powerful assistant handle the transaction. Not long after, my landlady Martha charged out of her house, wielding a broom. You swindler trying to cheat an old woman out of her house. Get out. Get the hell out of here. Martha's voice was booming. Her fighting spirit was even more formidable than the geese. Caleb and his assistant, who had just arrived, were chased off, scrambling to protect their heads. Chloe stood frozen, watching the absurd scene unfold. A mixture of anger and anxiety on her face. But as she watched Caleb's undignified retreat, the corner of her mouth twitched uncontrollably. I saw it. Her perspective was already starting to shift in some small, subtle way. Caleb ultimately failed to buy the house, but he wasn't ready to give up. He decided to stay and monitor me, checking into the town's only motel. That same evening, I saw a post on Facebook from the motel owner's wife. Big shot from the city, skin like a baby, got eaten alive by mosquitoes. Hilarious. I quietly gave a thumbs up. The next day, Caleb tried to demonstrate his capabilities. He saw some villagers hauling sacks of fertilizer, so he took off his suit jacket and offered to help. He hadn't even lifted a single bag to his shoulder before he let out a yelp. He'd thrown out his back. I was at my front gate leisurely instructing Chloe on the proper doggy paddle technique for digging holes to plant radishes. Man and dog working in perfect harmony. Chloe stood not far away, watching me expertly mend the fence her canine namesake had damaged, then start a fire for cooking. Then she glanced over at Caleb, who was struggling to even twist the cap off a bottle of water, all while clutching his lower back. Her expression grew more and more complex. Caleb finally couldn't take it anymore. He hobbled over to me, holding his back. Leo Hayes, I'm ordering you to change that dog's name. Immediately, I stopped what I was doing, pulled Chloe into a hug, and planted a kiss on her furry head. My sweet Chloe, someone doesn't like your name. What do you think we should do? The husky, as if on cue, let out a low arwoo at Caleb and bared her teeth. Caleb was practically vibrating with rage. Chloe, however, for the first time, gave me a look that was a mix of exasperation and a suppressed smile. It seemed she wasn't quite so angry anymore. Chloe changed. She stopped wearing the couture gowns that were so out of place in the country. The next day, she appeared in a brand new pink sweatsuit. It was still so new it practically gleamed, but at least she could walk in it. She began trying to win me back. Her method was to try and integrate into my life. She walked over to my vegetable patch where I was picking chives. Let me help. She crouched down and enthusiastically grabbed a handful of what she thought were herbs. I watched her in silence. She plucked one, sniffed it, and said, "This smells weird." I pointed to the actual chives growing nearby, which looked completely different. Those are the chives. Her face flushed bright red. At noon, she decided to learn how to cook to show off her domestic side. Leo, let me make you lunch. I hesitated, but ultimately surrendered the kitchen to her. 10 minutes later, thick black smoke was billowing out of the kitchen. I rushed in to find her standing helplessly in front of a flaming pan. I silently handed her a fire extinguisher. She fumbled with it, spraying white powder over half the kitchen. Looking at the utter mess and her soot-streaked face, I couldn't even get angry. I almost wanted to laugh. In the afternoon, I asked her to help feed the chickens. That had to be simple enough, right? Wrong. She tossed out a handful of feed, and the normally docile hens went into a frenzy. The mayor's big white goose joined the fray. She was chased around the yard by a flock of angry poultry, her shrieks echoing through the valley. Finally, her face pale with terror, she hid behind me, clutching the back of my shirt. "Leo, help me!" Caleb heard the commotion and rushed out of the motel, intent on playing the hero. But the moment he set foot in my yard, the goose switched targets and charged him once again. I surveyed the chaos and sighed. I stepped forward, made a few practiced clucking sounds, and herded the chickens and the goose back into their coop. The world was quiet again. Chloe peeked out from behind me, seeing how effortlessly I handled the situation. Her eyes held a new glimmer of admiration. From that day on, she started trying to win my favor in even clumsier ways. She had top-grade Wagyu beef flown in from the city. I cut half of it up in front of her and tossed it to Chloe, who devoured it greedily. Chloe was left speechless with rage. She finally broke. "Leo, why do you have to be so cold to me?" I was watering my vegetables. I pointed to the husky who was happily rolling in a patch of mud. "Look," I said. "Look how happy Chloe is." I turned back to her. "I want to be that happy too." The implication was clear. She was the source of my unhappiness. Chloe was stunned into silence. She stood there for the first time, starting to seriously reflect on her past behavior. That evening, I sat in the yard with the mayor and Doris, chatting under the stars. They told me stories about the village, and I told them about the latest trends in the city. Laughter filled the air. Chloe sat alone on the steps a short distance away, and Caleb was alone in his motel room. Through the window, I could see his silhouette as he paced back and forth, constantly on the phone, handling business. In that moment, Chloe must have realized it. She and Caleb were the real outsiders here, and I already belonged. The rain fell for 3 straight days. The only stone bridge connecting the village to the outside world was washed away by the surging creek. The power went out. Havenwood became an isolated island. Panic spread through the village. The mayor's landline was dead, and cell service was spotty at best. Caleb stood on the second-floor balcony of the motel, screaming into his phone. "I don't care what you have to do. Get a helicopter here now." A pause. "What do you mean you can't get clearance? What the hell am I paying you people for?" Besides impotent rage, there was nothing he could do. I pulled on a raincoat and walked into the town hall. The villagers were all gathered there, sighing and wringing their hands. "The bridge is out. My son was supposed to come visit me tomorrow. No power. The meat in my freezer is going to spoil." I clapped my hands to get everyone's attention. "Okay, let's not panic." My voice wasn't loud, but it was calm. "The rain isn't letting up. The most important thing right now is to make sure everyone is safe. I got the younger folks in the village to go with me, checking on houses door to door, especially those at the base of the hills, and help them temporarily relocate to the town hall. Then I went to my storage shed and dragged out the small diesel generator I kept for emergencies. With a loud rumble, the lights in the town hall flickered on. A wave of relief washed over the villagers' faces. Then I brought out my drone. During a lull in the downpour, I sent it up into the sky to survey the surrounding hillsides. A simple map quickly formed on my phone screen. I used a red marker to circle several areas showing signs of small landslides. "Stay away from the houses near these spots for now," I said, handing the phone to the mayor. "We have enough food and water stored up. As long as our homes are standing, we'll be safe." While I was doing all this, Chloe stood in the doorway. Rain soaked her hair and clothes, but she didn't seem to notice. She watched me in the storm, drenched, but directing everyone with a calm resolve, my eyes sharp and focused. This was a completely different person from the one in her memory, the fawning, insecure shadow who was always trailing behind her. She walked over, opened an umbrella, and held it over my head. Rainwater trickled down her arm as she asked, her voice almost a plea, "Is there anything I can do to help?" I glanced at her, then pulled a still warm hand warmer pack from my pocket and pressed it into her hand. "Take care of yourself. Don't get sick and don't get in the way. That's the biggest help you can be." My tone was harsh, but the warmth in her hand was real. Caleb tried to step in and take command to showcase his leadership skills. "Everyone listen to me. We should organize a team to clear the riverbed." He pointed in one direction. I cut him off immediately. "There's a small landslide over there from just a little while ago. Going there now would be a suicide mission." The footage from my drone was crystal clear. Caleb's face flushed, then paled. He stood speechless under the suspicious glares of the villagers. 3 days later, the rain stopped. Rescue teams and supplies finally arrived. In the aftermath of the crisis, my standing among the villagers reached its peak. Even the mayor clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Leo, we couldn't have done it without you." Chloe looked at me, and her expression had completely changed. It was filled with shock, admiration, and something else, something deeper I couldn't quite read. She knew then that the Leo Hayes who only lived to please her was well and truly dead. Caleb decided that the root of all his problems was the dog named Chloe. In his mind, if the dog disappeared, the insult to Chloe Sullivan would disappear, and she would come running back to him. His typical alpha male logic, after failing repeatedly, had finally veered into a darker territory. If the soft approach didn't work, he'd use force. He must have forgotten that this was Havenwood, where the people were as rugged as the landscape. He paid a few good-for-nothing punks from town to break into my house and steal my dog while I was with the mayor reporting on the post-flood situation. They probably thought dealing with one husky would be a piece of cake. They were wrong. My Chloe may be dumb, but she's still a husky. Her strengths lay not in intelligence, but in her size and incredible stamina. More importantly, this was her territory. When I got home, the yard was a disaster. 3 punks were there. 2 of them were being chased in circles around my vegetable patch by Chloe, both of them winded and gasping for air. The third was cornered against the wall, a strip of his jeans torn away. Chloe had a low growl rumbling in her chest. She had a few scratches on her, but her stance protecting her home was fierce. The warmth drained from my face. I didn't rush in swinging. I just put 2 fingers in my mouth and let out a sharp, piercing whistle. The next second, it was chaos. The neighbor's big yellow dogs, the mayor's prize rooster, and the goose, the undisputed war god of Havenwood, all came charging in from every direction as if they'd received a call to arms. They surrounded my yard, completely cutting off any escape. The 3 punks' legs turned to jelly. Just then, Caleb stepped out from behind a large tree nearby. He looked at the scene, his face ashen. "Leo, do you really have to be like this?" I ignored him. I walked to Chloe, knelt, and checked her wounds. Thankfully, they were just superficial scratches. I hugged her trembling body, my voice as cold as ice. "Get out of my yard." "Yep." Caleb began to lose his temper. Chloe Sullivan rushed out from behind him. She ran to my side, and when she saw the injured husky, her eyes immediately widened. She spun around and for the first time screamed at Caleb with raw fury. "Are you insane, Caleb? You'd actually hurt a dog!" Caleb looked at her, his face a mask of disbelief. "Chloe, you're yelling at me for him? For doggy keeps?" Chloe didn't answer. She spread her arms like a mother hen protecting her chick, shielding me and my dog from him. "This is my business. You have no right to interfere." Her voice was shaking when she shouted the words, but her posture was resolute in a way it had never been before. Caleb looked at her, then at me, his expression shifting from shock to rage, and finally to a dead, empty gray. This farce ended with his utter defeat. He didn't lose to me. He lost to the first unwavering act of betrayal Chloe had ever committed for my sake. The crack that had always existed between them shattered completely at that moment. "You should go home," Chloe said to Caleb, her voice quiet. Caleb left, taking with him the last shreds of his dignity and the bitter taste of defeat. Chloe stayed. She didn't check back into the motel. Instead, she rented the long-vacant cottage next to mine, officially becoming my neighbor. She seemed like a different person. She stopped the clumsy, laughable attempts to please me and began to genuinely learn how to live here. She learned how to tell seedlings apart from Martha and how to feed chickens from Doris. She still planted vegetables in crooked lines and got chased by poultry, but she didn't give up. She no longer tried to invade my kitchen. Instead, she'd wake up early and leave a small basket of freshly picked, still dirty vegetables on my porch. She stopped buying me expensive things, too. One day, I saw her sitting by her door, learning how to weave a straw hat from one of the local girls. Her fingers were covered in small cuts from the sharp blades of grass. The next day, a lopsided, frankly ugly straw hat appeared on my windowsill. I picked it up and studied it for a moment. Then I walked outside and placed it on the head of my husky, Chloe, who was busy digging a hole in the yard. The size was a perfect fit. Chloe, wearing her new hat, dug with renewed vigor. The real Chloe stood a short distance away, watching. Her eyes instantly turned red. She bit her lip, not saying a word. After a long moment, she muttered under her breath, "You're heartless, Leo Hayes." I heard her and turned my head. "Thank you for the compliment." She spun around and stomped away, furious. But the next morning, a basket of fresh vegetables was on my porch, right on schedule. In my presence, she'd lost all of her princess attitude. She became cautious, insecure, just like the old me. The tables had turned. The feeling wasn't half bad. That night, I set up a lounge chair in the yard to watch the stars. The country sky was like a bolt of black velvet, studded with diamonds. My husky, Chloe, was snoozing at my feet, letting out contented snores. Chloe Sullivan sat on the steps of her own porch about 30 feet away. She hugged her knees, watching me quietly, wanting to come closer, but not daring to. A gentle breeze blew, carrying the scent of grass and earth. I closed my eyes. This whole redemption arc thing was really heating up. I just wondered how long she could keep it going. My two best friends, having heard the gossip, couldn't stay away. One weekend, they rolled up in a beat-up pickup truck, the bed loaded with barbecue supplies and beer, and stormed my little sanctuary. Holy crap, Leo. What is this? Some kind of masterclass in taming of the shrew? My friend Zach jumped out of the truck, and his jaw dropped when he saw Chloe Sullivan hovering around me. My other friend Mike spotted Caleb lurking under a tree nearby, smoking and scowling. He hadn't left after all. Zach and Mike exchanged a look of pure shock, then simultaneously gave me a thumbs up. We set up the grill in the yard. The sound of sizzling meat filled the air, the smell intoxicating. The three of us drank beer and shot the breeze, laughing our heads off. Chloe hesitated for a long time before she walked over with a plate of sliced fruit. Would you guys like some fruit?" Zach eyed her sideways and said deliberately loud, Well, if it isn't Princess Sullivan herself, can a debutante like you really stomach our roadside trash?" He was getting back at her for me. When the original Leo was chasing her, he was constantly on the receiving end of snide remarks just like that from her friends. Chloe's face went from red to white. She stood there holding the plate, not knowing whether to stay or go. I didn't help her. I just silently pulled a can of Coke from the cooler and handed it to her. She took it numbly and mumbled, "Thanks." Caleb must have wanted to regain some face in front of my friends. He stubbed out his cigarette and swaggered over, launching into a monologue about some multi-billion-dollar project he was overseeing. Zach and Mike completely ignored him. Leo, what kind of dumb stuff did your Chloe get into today? Yeah, that video of her fighting the rooster was epic. What happened next? The three of us talked animatedly about my dog, leaving Caleb standing there like a statue. His face was darker than the charcoal on the grill. A few beers later, Zach was drunk. He threw an arm around my shoulder, his words slurring. I remember when our boy Leo was chasing you. Princess Sullivan, man, it was pathetic. He let out a loud burp. He'd invite you to dinner. You'd bring 8 of your girlfriends. He'd give you a gift, and you'd turn around and give it to Caleb. And now look how the tables have turned. Ha ha ha. Zach's laughter was loud and jarring. The yard fell silent. Chloe's face was as white as a sheet. Those past actions, which she had taken for granted, were now being laid bare for everyone to see. Shame and embarrassment washed over her, making her want to disappear. Caleb finally snapped. "You're drunk! Shut your mouth!" he yelled, pointing a finger at Zach. Zach was no pushover. He shot to his feet. "I should shut up. Who the hell are you? I don't remember you telling her to shut up when her friends were giving my boy crap." The two started arguing, shoving each other, all semblance of dignity gone. In the end, the mayor had to come over, drawn by the noise, to pull them apart. My friends stood firmly by my side, their glares and words dripping with scorn for Caleb. That night was another crushing defeat for him. After my friends left, it was just me and Chloe in the yard. She stood with her head down for a long time. Then she walked up to me and gave a deep, formal bow. "Leo, I am sorry." It was the first time she had ever apologized to me with such sincerity for her past and for the pain I had once endured. After that apology, Chloe became much quieter. But she didn't leave. She kept tending her garden, feeding her chickens, and learning how to be a real member of the community. She just stopped trying to get close to me, stopped watching me with those cautious eyes. It was as if she was showing me through her actions that she was staying for herself, not for me. I was happy for the peace and quiet until one clear, starry night. I was relaxing in the yard as usual when Chloe came out of her little house and called my name, Leo Hayes. She had changed into a simple, clean white sundress, her hair tied back neatly. In the moonlight, her face looked exceptionally soft. She walked up to me and looked at me with profound seriousness. "Leo Hayes, I like you." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Not in a brotherly way, in an I want to be with you way." She seemed to have summoned every ounce of courage she possessed. "I know that if I say this now, you won't believe me. You'll probably even think it's laughable. I was awful before. I took your kindness for granted while pushing you away. I was selfish, arrogant, and I treated your feelings like they were my right." She recounted my life here, saying she envied it, that she had seen a completely new version of me, a calm, capable, vibrant person who fascinated her. Every day I've been here, I've been reflecting, and I've only just realized what a precious thing I threw away. She apologized for her past self and asked me to give her a chance. I listened quietly. I felt no emotion, neither moved nor scornful. I just felt that some things, once they're over, are truly over. I asked her, "Do you like the me I am now, or the ghost of the Leo Hayes you could summon with a snap of your fingers?" Chloe shook her head frantically. "No, it's you right now, the one who can farm and fix fences and protect the whole village." I smiled and pointed up at the star-filled sky. "Well, the me right now just wants to watch the stars with my dog. I'm not interested in a relationship." My smile in her eyes must have felt colder than ice. I stood up and brushed the dirt off my pants. "Princess, you have a bright future waiting for you back in the city. Don't waste your time here." I looked at her and said each word clear and deliberate. "This temple is too small to house 2 great deities." I said too, her and Caleb. In my mind, they were the same kind of people. Tears without warning began to fall from Chloe's eyes. big fat tears that splattered on the ground. It wasn't the first time she had cried in front of me, but this time it wasn't out of frustration or indignation. It was from rejection. It was the raw, real pain of wanting something you can't have. She finally understood. This time it was really different. The Leo Hayes, who had once worshipped her as a goddess, had been killed by her own hands. Caleb hadn't given up. He probably thought Chloe's rejection was just a temporary confusion. He believed that if he made a grand enough gesture, she would realize who her true destiny was. So he planned what he considered a romantic proposal. He spent a fortune hiring a professional event planning team from the city. They trucked in 9,999 vibrant red roses and a fleet of drones for a light show. He was going to give Chloe a huge surprise in the skies above Havenwood. On the day of the proposal, the entire village smelled of roses. At dusk, hundreds of drones took to the sky. The villagers all came out to watch, marveling at the sight. Caleb, dressed in a white suit and holding a bouquet, stood in the center of a heart-shaped sea of roses, looking like Prince Charming. He held a megaphone ready to begin his heartfelt confession. The drones in the sky began to shift. According to the plan, they were supposed to spell out Kaloe, marry me. But whether due to signal interference or operator error, the drone formation went haywire. In the end, they formed 4 crooked, wobbly words in the night sky. Marry me, please. There was no name. The villagers started murmuring, who's proposing to who? To make matters worse, a few drones malfunctioned, trailing black smoke as they plummeted directly into Mayor Thompson's pigsty. The pigsty immediately erupted in chaos. Caleb, holding the megaphone, began his passionate declaration regardless. But the feedback from the megaphone was terrible. His cracking, screeching Chloe echoed throughout the village. He sounded like a pig being slaughtered. The villagers thought something terrible had happened and came running with hoes and shovels to see what was wrong. The scene descended into utter confusion. My husky Chloe thought it was a game. She excitedly bounded into the sea of roses and began to roll around and play. In the blink of an eye, the heart-shaped flower arrangement was half destroyed, and the leading lady of this drama, the real Chloe Sullivan, remained expressionless through it all. She stood at the edge of the crowd, watching coldly. Only when Caleb pulled out a diamond ring and got down on one knee did she move. "Chloe, marry me!" he yelled with all his might. She finally walked through the crowd and stood before him. Everyone thought she was going to tearfully accept. Instead, she said only one thing. "Caleb, you look like a clown." Then she turned, walked over to me, where I was picking rose petals out of my dog's fur, and said softly, "Let me help you with that." Caleb knelt on the ground under the watchful eyes of the entire village, his face the color of ash. The next day, the Maybach quietly drove out of the village. This time, it didn't come back. With Caleb gone, the world was finally peaceful. Chloe didn't leave. She even started tidying up the cottage next door, planting beautiful flowers. She no longer went out of her way to please me, nor did she mention anything about getting together. She just quietly lived her life as my neighbor. She would silently sweep my yard clean. When I was cooking, she would appear at just the right moment with chopped scallions and garlic. When I was lying in the yard reading, she would sit on her own porch reading a book of her own. A fence separated us, yet we had fallen into a strange kind of harmony. I thought things would stay this peaceful forever. Until that afternoon, the punks from town, the ones I taught a lesson, came back looking for revenge, this time with friends. They blocked the entrance to my yard, all of them holding weapons. "Hey, pretty boy! Today we're going to teach you a lesson you won't forget." I put down my hoe, ready to stretch my muscles. A figure suddenly stepped in front of me. It was Chloe. In her hands, she held a long, flat broom handle used for laundry. Her legs were shaking and her face was pale, but her eyes were surprisingly fierce. "Don't you dare touch him!" she yelled at the group of thugs who towered over her. In that moment, I'll admit it, something somewhere deep inside me was gently stirred. I pulled her behind me. I told you not to cause trouble. That's what I said, but it wasn't what I was thinking. 3 minutes later, the thugs were groaning on the ground. I turned around and saw her looking at me, her face a mixture of awe and residual fear. I sighed, but I couldn't stop the corners of my mouth from turning up just slightly. It was another perfect sunny afternoon. I was dozing off in the rocking chair in my yard. The husky Chloe was chasing a butterfly, having the time of her life. The real Chloe was sitting on a small stool nearby, holding a simple hand fan, waving at me once, twice. Her technique was clumsy, the breeze was intermittent at best. I closed my eyes, enjoying the rare moment of peace, and spoke softly. Chloe. Both the girl and the dog responded at once. The husky let out a happy ear woo, abandoned the butterfly, and trotted over to my chair, rubbing her head against my leg. Chloe stopped fanning, held her breath, and looked at me, waiting for what I would say next. I opened my eyes. I looked past the dog at my feet and up at her. She was so nervous, gripping the fan tightly. I smiled. I was talking to you. Come a little closer. I can't feel the breeze.